Okay, so I finished reading the book Angel Isle by Peter Dickinson a few days ago, and actually I'm still not sure what I think about it. So the story basically follows this group of characters from a place called the Valley, and they're going on an adventure to look for one of their world's most powerful magicians that they call the Rope Maker. So the valley is kind of a unique place in their world in that it's set apart from the rest of the world and protected by magic that the rope maker put around it a couple centuries ago. And since the magic is now failing, these characters are going on a journey to find him so that he can put those protection spells back on. Because of what he did, the valley is also a place where there isn't a lot of magic. Although I'm not really sure if that's terribly important to the story because they do have characters with like special abilities. So for instance, the main character Maya is really sensitive to magic, even though she doesn't have magic herself. And then her companions, one of them has like a really powerful magical tool, and then the other person is someone who can hear the water. So even though it's not classified as magic in their world, it feels a little bit like magic, so I'm not really sure that distinction is really all that important. But anyways, the idea is that they go on this adventure and have to deal with a lot of problems because they're moving through an empire where magic is really strictly regulated. So, there's a lot of challenges, I guess, in terms of how they can find the rope maker without getting caught by these like quote unquote evil magicians and killed before they can do something for their valley. I think I found the story a little hard to get through. It wasn't that it was a bad story, but I think there were just some things that made it so it didn't really resonate with me. So first was the writing style. The whole thing had sort of a folktale, fairy tale kind of tone to it, where it was really blasé about things like magic and violence. And I think that made it really hard to get into like what was happening. I felt a little bit like I wasn't really in the world, I suppose, if that makes any sense. So yeah, like there's a certain way that people tell folk tales or fairy tales that create kind of distance because you're like the way you describe things and stuff, you're just not really as into the story as you are with some other types of writing styles. And then the other thing was that since the main character was a 12-year-old girl, it felt a little bit like the author used her age as a way of omitting a lot of stuff that I actually would have thought was really interesting. So for example, like the older traveling companions might be talking about things like the history of the empire where they live, or like the history of these pirates that have been attacking the empire, and I'd really want to know what all that history was and like what all the details are, but because the main character is really young and doesn't understand it and doesn't care as much, like she dozes off or her mind wanders off to other topics, and then as the reader, like you don't get any of that information. I thought that was extremely frustrating. I don't know if it's because maybe the author doesn't think readers would be interested or something, but I think it made it so it actually ended up omitting a lot of the information that otherwise would have made the story more appealing to me. So yeah, like there were some interesting things. I kind of got more into it near the end where a lot of their conflicts start to like really heat up. Like I guess the climax of the story, for instance, when they actually find the rope maker, when you're actually dealing with the evil magicians, and when you're actually trying to figure out what to do about the invading pirates and like the empire and everything. Like when the conflicts get a little bit more when you get a little bit more action, I guess, related to the major conflicts going on in the story, so where you have a little bit more of that context and history, like it starts to get a bit more interesting, but overall it wasn't really a story that I particularly enjoyed, even though I do think it was well written.